All right, so yes, a quick introduction to data visualization. And I'm going to start with kind of what you kind of don't need to know. By my count, Excel has, which I'm sure many of you have used or something similar to it, 61 different chart types, some of which sort of slight modifications, on a theme, but a whole lot of them, some of which are really bizarre. This is a radar chart that, I'm sure has its place, but I sort of have this feeling like if it takes kind of, longer to make sense of a chart than it would to sort of like just explains what's in there in words, that is not a meaningful chart. This is a box and whisker chart. I know I've seen these with like stock stuff. Again, I feel like the time it would take a reader to sort of make sense of this, it generally diminishes its value. Again, it has its uses, and there are some cases where this may be sort of perfectly valuable, but frankly, like a lot with Excel and journalism, it can do a whole lot more than kind of you really need it to do. So what I want to do is kind of focus on the types of charts that most journalists are going to use. And again, until you get into like, super fancy stuff that, moves around and the like. But in terms of a more or less, static chart, it may be interactive, but sort of non-animated chart. There are three charts I kind of want you to be kind of aware of when to use them. And then one, as you see at the bottom, sort of slightly more advanced one, that's a scatter plot that we'll talk about. You've probably at some time created these three and maybe not a scatter plot. It's just like one half step more advanced, but really, really valuable. So, so I want to share that with you as well. All right, so I'm just going to kind of go through these and kind of what they're for. So line charts, and my guess is all of you probably know this kind of instinctively, if nothing else, but I want to sort of, plant it sort of clearly if you've thought, oh yeah, that makes sense. I hadn't really thought about it. It's good to sort of have this, knowledge kind of nailed down. So line charts, as you see here, best for illustrating continuous trends over time. The data points may be captured at distinct points, but there's generally kind of an even, arc from point to point that is then represented as a line. So on the left, air temperature over, I think it's a 24-hour period. My second screen is slightly blocked. Yes, 24 hours. Measured in 1 hour increments, and then a line sort of drawn to continue it. US population, again, a single distinct point for each year, but an understanding that, there may be some variation in there, but that, the line generally captures that trend over time. So again, continuous trend over time, line chart is your friend. Next, column and bar charts that can do the very same things that a line chart can do. Sometimes they're better for it. Sometimes a line chart makes more sense. But bar charts certainly can do one thing line charts can't do, and that's showing side-by-side comparison. So on the left, these are academic degrees by type of degree. And again, I really should, my one screen is blocking my second screen. So I'm going to. All right, so these are academic degrees broken down by gender, and so that you can kind of see kind of side by side. You could also, flip this around sort of alternately so that each of the groups of data was by gender, and you could see, how the different, each bar would represent then a degree rather than, number of degrees rather than number of degrees per gender. But anyway, on the left, kind of for a side-by-side comparison, bar charts or column charts, I'll show a bar chart shortly, are a good choice, but also kind of non-continuous trends over time. And in particular, as you see here, trends where there might be both a positive and a negative value to them, where a line chart would be, just kind of all over the place. And it works better to kind of get, showing distinct points and not, there's sort of some continuation there, but not trying to draw a straight line from one time period to another. So here you see the deficit and surplus, that I suppose, month to month, the spending goes up, more than revenue, or goes down. But this works better as a column chart than as a line chart. And certainly if you had something, like homicides, or the number of car thefts or something like that, that it would be odd to sort of see it on a continuous line. Certainly, crime can be seasonal. It would make much more sense to have them as distinct elements on a chart, as you see here. So if you look at the academic degrees, this is technically a column chart. It's sometimes called a bar chart. It is technically a column chart because the columns run vertically, but just flip it on its side and it becomes technically a bar chart. Again, they're both sort of used interchangeably, but if you want to be sort of fully accurate, column chart is vertical, bar chart is horizontal. All right. Last among them of the sort of common charts you've probably worked with are pie charts, and not surprisingly best for showing sort of the parts of the whole, right? How big a piece of the pie does, a particular element of a whole get. These have fallen somewhat out of favor among some sort of graphic artists and purists who say they don't really do a good job of showing comparisons. So if you look at, corrections and health and hospitals, sorry if I hope it's big enough on your screens, corrections in yellow, this is the Connecticut state budget, corrections in yellow, health and hospitals in blue. Can you tell at a glance which area is getting more money than the other? Right? Or, the big ones, education, museums, and libraries versus fringe benefits, debts, and miscellaneous. It's like they're pretty close and a little hard to tell. So there are some who think if the purpose is to give some insights into, where the money is going and who's getting the most money, you're better off with a bar chart or a column chart. So this is now on the right, that same data, but done as a bar chart. And you can see, oh, you know what? Corrections slightly edges out health and hospitals, when honestly, to my eye, the health and hospitals looks in the pie chart a little bigger than corrections. So if it were important to illustrate, truly what kind of the rankings are, who's, getting the most money, some say, and I think if you look at this, yeah, the bar chart does a better sense of comparing kind of one agency to another. So, maybe not best for showing parts of the whole. On the other hand, pie charts do have their place. So here are a couple of reasons why. If your point is sort of less to show, sort of a specific breakdown, but rather you want to show kind of the dominance of one category, pie charts can make a lot of sense. So this is right, that donations to Governor Jim Justice's campaign. Governor Justice was just in the news today, and I can't remember why, but I stumbled on his name. And I suppose not surprisingly, the bulk of the money comes from West Virginia. But if that was sort of mostly what you wanted to show, or wanted to show, hey, a not insignificant amount is coming from, other states, a pie chart can, do that in a reasonable way. So that's a sense where seeing the whole really is important, because you don't get that in a bar chart. You don't see how any one element fits into the total the way you do with a pie chart. So secondly, on the right, if you're comparing portions among multiple pie charts, I think pie charts can make a lot of sense. You could do this with a bar chart. I think visually, if you're trying to get a sense, this is country to country, how much of the wealth is controlled by the top 10%, how much by the bottom 50%. What a surprise, the United States has, much higher inequality than other countries. I think a pie chart works well for something like this. Again, not the only option, but I think an option. So summarizing there, line charts generally for continuous trends over time, column and bar charts for comparisons or non-continuous developments over time. Pie charts when it's really important to show the whole and the parts of the whole, a good choice. But also if you're showing dominance or comparing multiple pie charts, I think it's a reasonable chart. If, however, more important really to show the, relative amounts for each element, bar or column chart might be a better choice. Now, you can always compromise and do a pie chart, but add specific percentages, right, as part of the chart. That kind of gets the job done, but we have to remember, charts are meant to kind of be complementary, right? They're meant to, very visually kind of make a statement. And if the viewer needs to sort of do too much work to make sense of what's going on, then sometimes it's not a particularly successful visualization. All right, I'm going to move on to that fourth, slightly seemingly more advanced. It's really not much more complicated. It just may be something you haven't worked with, and that is a scatter plot. And a scatter plot is simply are points on a two-axis grid, where often when we do data, if it's a single point, well, I guess in a sense it's multiple points. If it's in this year, there were this many whatever, wildfires. But the years in that case, when we're doing trend work, are sort of, fixed. They're sort of kind of the same for everyone. With a scatter plot, it allows you to plot the values across two different variables. So on the left here, we're looking at share of the population with at least one vaccine dose. Along the x-axis, the horizontal axis, and then the number of COVID infections on the y-axis or the vertical axis, and then where each state fits, on that grid, you get a dot, and that can be really valuable. One, as you see on the left, establishing a trend line. If you sort of average out all of these dots here, what would the line look like as you go from lower share vaccinated to higher share vaccinated? There are different ways to calculate a trend line, straight line and logarithmic and this and that. But in general, you can see here it sort of draws a line of best fit, among all of the values there. And then separately, in addition to, letting you draw an inference about what is the relationship between these two variables, in this case, vaccination and infection. It can also help you, and we love this in SOJO and positive deviance, identify apparent outliers that might indeed be your positive deviance. But outliers, of course, can be positive or negative. So if you look at the COVID chart, South Carolina seems to be something of an outlier. Yes, fairly low vaccination, but kind of way higher than would be expected for that level of vaccination. Idaho, despite kind of the crisis that they're under now, this data is 1 week old, and I wonder if things have changed significantly as Idaho experiences its troubles, but so far appears something of a positive outlier. Very low vaccination, but lower infection rates than a number of states that have even better vaccination rates. On the right is a terrific work done at Stanford on test scores and socioeconomic status for, I think, 10,000 schools. And here, again, you can kind of see the not at all surprising sort of correlation between socioeconomic status and although this says test scores, I believe what's actually measured is number of grades above or below expected grade level, or sort of average performance on a test. So students in wealthier communities are, well above the number of, grade levels are a significant number of grade levels above average. Students on average in poorer communities lagging in grade levels. And here again, you also see a couple of dots that aren't, around kind of the big blob, and those can stand out as positive deviants. And if you were, again, as we always say, these outliers are simply, tips, leads on a possible story. But if you were curious, are there communities with less wealth that nevertheless are outperforming? These dots here out of, you wouldn't want to call 10,000 schools and ask, but these dots here can give you a quick visual sense of a place that might be worth a little bit of deeper reporting. So those are scatter plots. So line charts, column and bar charts, pie charts, scatter plots. I think the main charts you want to get to use and think about using them in the right way. And with that, I'm forgetting. Oh, and of course, the stuff none of us could do not that many years ago, and now truly everyone can do. Not a chart, but certainly data visualization is maps. And we'll actually see in a little bit a third mapping choice, but generally speaking, we use maps to put dots on a map for specific locations, whether it's, it doesn't have to be like a single latitude, longitude point. It could be, this city. In this case, on the left, these are hospitals in Chicago. So these are the, addresses of all of the hospitals there. And then on the right is what we call a chloropleth map, in which different geographies, in this case, these are counties, are represented in different colors, depending, that indicate a value across some trend here. This is work done by the Daily Yonder, looking at COVID transmission rate for rural counties and non-rural counties, and using a color chart kind of from low to high. All right, so that was, again, we could spend a week on this, but I just wanted to kind of quickly run through some of the options here. And now want to actually talk about some specific programs. You'll see here kind of the quick rundown, and at the end of this, I'm going to put a link in the chat to a handout that's going to cover much of what we've gone over here. Datawrapper, I think some of you use this, is surprisingly easy to get going with a chart that can be put online. But as simple as it is, it also has some nice customization to, pretty it up if and annotate and the like, if you are so inclined. Flourish, slightly higher learning curve, has a number of really interesting and engaging data visualization options, and sort of more and more, I think that's some of the name of the game of having stuff that isn't simply interactive in the sense that, hover the cursor over it and some data pops up, but data visualizations, that actually animate. And I think, maybe audiences will get bored of those in time, I think for now they're fairly engaging and probably lead to pretty good time on page. So that is Flourish. Flourish has some sort of dotted line connection to Google that is still in some ways involved. And the Google News Initiative actually makes a more advanced version of Flourish available for free to news outlets. So that is worth knowing about as well. And then there is Tableau. It's actually now owned by Salesforce and has been around a long time. I think it's been around like 20 years. I don't know how kind of widely it was used by the public in, more than the last 10 years or so. It is not terribly intuitive. It is the kind of program that if you use and then don't use for 6 months, you will find yourself going, how do I do that again? I am speaking from multiple personal experiences. So the steepest learning curve of them, but lots of interesting bells and whistles, lots of ways to kind of combine multiple visualizations. There's a way to sort of start with building a visualization and then, move it into a dashboard where you can include kind of multiple pieces of information and have kind of a ready to go, interesting page to put up. So we're going to look at each of these. We're actually going to do some building with Datawrapper, again, Flourish and Tableau with a little steeper learning curve. I just want to show you some of the things they can do that might have you going, oh, okay, I do want to learn more. With all of these, there are good online tutorials and how-tos, that the companies put out and that average folks put out as well. So lots of ways to dig in and learn at your own pace if you want to dive in any of them. And of course, I'm always here to help with anything if I can. So with that, let me quickly go over these. So I'm going to kind of review it. Datawrapper, drag and drop simplicity, but with a lot of customization. Here are a couple of maps or a chart and a map built with those. And again, in sort of typical sense, if this were live map, as you scrolled your mouse over the bars, the date and the numbers would pop up. So, certainly advance over not all that many years ago when, everything was just static. You'd build a chart in Excel, or a graphic artist would, build it with some drawing program. And that would be that. Even online, all you could do was sort of look at it, maybe draw arrows to it, not you, the user. And same here with this map. If this were live, as you move the mouse around, you'd get a tooltip would pop up giving you the per capita income, for that country. So, and again, both of these maps or these visualizations, truly a couple of minutes from start to finish to put them together. So very simple to work with. Flourish, again, that higher learning curve, some cool things we'll look at. I don't know if you may well have all seen this, what we call a bar chart race, where this animates and that over time, the size of the bars change, but also the rankings change as well if one overtakes another. Again, I think really engaging for audiences. And this is a survey, a way of looking at survey information that we will talk about that can be carved up in a lot of different ways. And then again, Tableau, these are back when I was doing stuff, a couple of things I built on the left. This is a look at the Connecticut state budget with sort of circles representing the sizes of the budget. If you click on any of these circles, this list of blue bars comes up. I've been getting, why can't I, there we go. I've been inundated with spam calls the last couple of days and have happily ignored them while I'm working. And now that I'm on this call, my wife calls and I have to hang up on her. So such is Zoom life. But in any event, so again, this thing on the left where you can click on a choice here and then have a specific breakdown for that, the kind of thing we were never really going to be able to do with Excel. So just sort of a little fancier. And again, I'll show this live. But showing kind of minute by minute how scoring went on a UConn women's basketball game. So I will show those, but for now, let us dive in. Let me switch shares. If I can find the right one. Okay. All right, are we seeing Datawrapper? Yes, all right, excellent. So with this, I'm going to build a couple of charts just to kind of show how simple it is. Let me make sure I remember what I'm doing. Okay. So with Datawrapper, basically up at the top here, do you want a new chart? Do you want a new map? Are you building just a table? We're going to build a chart. I had, for another Sojo project, had put together some data just on the number of guns sold each year in Connecticut in the United States. So let's say we wanted to just simply chart that. So I would click New Chart. And then it wants me to either upload or paste the data. I could go into Google Sheets or Excel or anything, just kind of define and copy the data and paste it here. But I'm just going to upload it from my computer. So Datawrapper has taken a guess, in this case correct, that the thing called year, with a bunch of things that look like years, is a date field, and you can see it puts dates in green. So it's already done that for me. It's figured that out. It's figured out this is probably a number, and it has done that. If it were wrong, I could make some changes there, but all it wants me to do here is make sure, yeah, did I get that right? I'm going to click proceed. And if we wanted a line chart, we're done. I mean, it automatically, makes a guess as what might be the right one here. Again, I don't think of gun sales as continuous in quite that way. I think I would do better with a column chart. You can see lots of choices here, not all of which would be appropriate for this data. I click column chart, and there's my chart. And truly, if I wanted to just, type in US gun sales, I'm done. I've got a chart there. But there are all sorts of, and again, interactive in the sense that I hope this is showing up on your end as I scroll the mouse over, I get the information for that chart. But lots of visual choices that I can make here. You can see this says 5M. If I wanted it to look differently, I could come down here, I'm not remembering where it is, and change what that looks like. I probably wouldn't want, the whole long thing, or they would bump in there. If I just really like, thin bars or want them practically touching, I can do that. I can certainly change the color, if I'm so inclined there. If I want the millions here on the right side, I can put it there. I can also change the size of it. You can see down here, I can sort of make it ideal for a tablet or for mobile. It gives me a check on color blindness. Not a lot of men, 1 or 2% of men have different color blindness, and it can say, oh, you know what, this would work better for there. So if I'm sort of happy with that, again, I can add an annotation if I want to give a link to where I got the information. If I want to add a byline to it, I can do that. I can highlight certain elements of it if I wanted to indicate, what I really want to show is, right, I think, be forgetting there's a way, I'm going to get this wrong, that you can, all right, yeah, forget I said that. There's a way you can draw a line on here, add text to it, add an arrow if you'd like to connect to one of them. So if you wanted something like, gun sales peaked here in 2016, something like that, you can add that very simply to do. And then click here with layout. Do you want to let people download the underlying data? Do you want to click there and it will add Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter buttons so that people can, automatically push out your content there. But really, all of these kind of optional ways, if you wanted to highlight certain areas, if you wanted to change some of the formatting, I think you could probably, shrink the size down here if you wanted to make sure every year got included there. But the initial part, right, was literally, we said new chart, we uploaded the data, we verified years and numbers, and we clicked bar chart instead of the line chart. And from there, it was kind of good to go. We get to publish and embed. You need to sort of publish it, meaning it's, available and out there. If you pay, you can keep stuff private. If not, when you publish it, if someone were to look for it, they could find it. But once you've published it, you can then get a link to it or an embed or iframe. But you can also, download it as a PNG if you wanted it as sort of a static graphic. So really, very, very simple to build this column chart or kind of any chart. I mean, I don't think any more difficult, than it would be with Excel. And this has a lot more customization than Excel has. All right, I'm going to move on to scatter plot. Actually, that scatter plot that we saw. So I'm going to start with a new chart. Same thing. I'm going to go get my data. So vaccine versus infection data. Here, it has put, it recognizes that this is text, so it is in black. It has determined that, everything else here, vaccination rates, population, case rates are numbers, so those are in blue. That all works for me. I click proceed. So it loves its bar charts. It thought, oh, let me just plot all of these on a bar chart. So you get, 35 million down here with, percent vaccinated, which don't rise any more than 100. So that's why it just looks like a flat line if your chart goes up to 35 million. So clearly we don't want a line chart here, but scatter plot, as simple as clicking scatter plot. And it is going to make a guess. And I think it just sort of picks what are the first two columns here. So here it's looking at fully vaccinated versus population. And that is not what we want, but that's all right. We're going to go into refine and we're going to change that. And we want, I have to remember which one is first. Hang on. Yeah, we're going to leave this fully vaccinated. So across the horizontal axis is from a little more than, I guess, about 35% vaccinated up to 70% vaccinated. And then the vertical axis is case rate per 100,000. And each of these is a state, although you'll see, nothing happens when I hover over them at this point. But a number of things that I can do here, starting, of course, down at the bottom with adding that trend line. And you can see, for your readers and viewers benefit, but also for yours, as a reporting tool, getting a sense of, is there sort of a clear correlation here? Sometimes you'll plot a bunch of stuff and you'll see pretty much a straight line straight across. And that would indicate there really is no positive or negative correlation between the two variables that you're measuring. All right, other things we can do. Again, if you want the bubbles a little bit bigger, you can make them bigger, but you can also make them variable based on something. If you thought, let's have those dots, but in case it might be interesting, let's have them sized by population. So now we've got, again, the same dot vaccination versus case rate, but maybe would this give us some insights? If, again, as a reporting tool, we looked at this and it's like, oh, interesting, all of the low population or high population states end up in one place on the chart. That might be something interesting. And here it looks a little more varied, but again, an option that you have with no programming chops, no weird Greek letters to worry about. It's just clicking variable and moving this around until it looks like you wanted to look. And again, if you don't like the circles, this gives you a boatload of options to work with. That it's all just sort of point and click. So, right, it took us a minute to build that scatter plot, but there's still plenty of customization if we wanted to add to it. Again, we can say let's do everything in red, or let's go back to blue. I think this works. We really wanted to specify, I really want Louisiana, to stand out here. So I can make just Louisiana red, if I were so inclined. Again, lots of great customizations if you're sort of so inclined. All right, I'm going to click ahead to annotate. And a key value here is labeling, right? Not a whole lot was going on when we hovered over these, but certainly it might help to have the state listed there. So now when we hover over a dot, we get the specific state. And when there is enough room, it sort of builds the state in there. But you can also change that and customize it. You can say, do at least this many states if you want, or you can specifically tell it, make sure the states never overlap, even if you were sort of inclined to, put some states there. So again, loads of stuff you can do with this. And even with all this customization, we were, 3, 4, 5 minutes into this. And certainly if you wanted more than just the state, if you thought, let's when they hover over it, let's let them see everything, you can customize the tooltip. And I thought, all right, normally this actually, oh, I'm sorry, it's down at the bottom here. Yes. So right now it is showing the state. But if I thought, let's also show the fully vaccinated rate, I can, as simple as click on it, and now I get Texas and 48.4. But I could also, up here, where it's put state, I can just type what I want, understanding that those double French brackets will put in whatever the value is for that variable. So in space state, comma space, and I'm going to take that fully vaccinated and put it up there instead. Of the population, that's a percent are vaccinated. And now when I hover over, I get sort of exactly what I wrote. Again, no programming, no terribly heavy lifting, fairly easy to work with. And here, as we said before, with scatter plots give you both that trend line, but can also help you find outliers as possible tips. So, right, Florida kind of jumps out here. You know, very high case rate, despite better vaccination than others. And if you did some, you know, analysis, you might conclude, all right, well, some of that has to do with the demographics and average age and the like. But as we always say, right, these are tips. You know, Alabama doing awfully poorly, Mississippi as well, it's kind of hidden by it. Even for their low vaccination rates, very high case rates, maybe not surprising, but you know, over here, Michigan, only middling vaccination across this axis, but not very high on case rates. Is there something, you know, interesting going on there? So scatter plots, simple to build with Datawrapper, and can give you a whole lot of information and can present information to your readers and viewers, I think, in really interesting ways with no programming and, you know, for this, you know, 10 minutes worth of work. And we hit some of the highlights of the customization, but, you know, there's even more that can be done. I've been really bad about the chat. And I see, oh, good. Okay. Yes, thank you, Betsy. Yes, Datawrapper does indeed include maps, and we're going to build one. So I'm going to click New Map. We talked about a locator map, right? Kind of the, you know, dots on a map. Fancy name, chloropleth maps that sort of shade different filled-in regions. And this third map, sort of a combination in a way. This is basically a dots on a map, but with the size of the dots, you know, as we saw when we changed the size of the dots for population, the size of the dots indicating the intensity of some variable. Sadly, you see this a lot with charts around homicides, where, you know, this dot is Chicago and the size of the circle, you know, on top of Chicago is this big, and over here, you know, this is a dot showing, you know, Des Moines, and the circle is this size, probably a whole lot smaller than Chicago's, so that you see both location and intensity in one map. So also good to use, a little more advanced, but good to know. But we're going to build what we saw, that per capita income map. So that is a chloropleth map. So I'm going to click that, indicating that's the kind of map I want. I can't impress upon you what an advance it is now, having all of these sort of pre-built maps of the geography. So sort of the, well, we call a shape file that has like the actual geometry, you know, the very sophisticated polygon that makes up, you know, all the suburbs of Sydney, Australia. I mean, just the number just of Australian maps is crazy. But, you know, not that long ago, you'd have data, then you'd have to go find a map, you know, that had the geography and sort of merge them together, and that would sort of be the start of it. But Datawrapper and certainly plenty of other places have kind of done that for you. So in this case, we want a map of the US states. And so there it is, again, with all of these geographies kind of pre-built. So that's step one. We say we want the states map. And then it wants your data. You could copy and paste it. You could hand enter it individually. I don't know why you would do that. In this case, we're going to, as before, just import it from a file that we have. So I click import your data set, and it gives us a quick caveat that for it to work, the column that has the names of the geographies. In this case, the names of the states, it needs to be called names or ISO code. So, if it weren't, then I'd go back and I'd change, if I label the column states, I'd just change it to names so that it could identify, yeah, this is the thing that has Alabama and Alaska in it that you want to match to the geography. So I have indeed done that. Again, I could paste it here if I wanted to. I'm going to upload. And one simple thing here, it can't handle a traditional Excel file. For this map, it needs to be what we call a CSV file, stands for comma separated values. If you have Excel, and I'm sure Google Sheets as well, you can save an Excel sheet as a CSV. And the main difference is a CSV can only handle one worksheet. So, we'll often download data from the government and elsewhere as a CSV. If you're going to then work with it in Excel with multiple worksheets, those tabs at the bottom, you're going to want to save it as sort of a full-on Excel file. So my per capita income indeed was an Excel file. I just went in and saved it as a CSV instead. So I'm going to double click on that. It has correctly figured out, yes, this is the column that has the names in it. If it weren't, I would say, no, you got it wrong. It's this other column. But yes, it just wants to know that's the one with names, yes. And that the first row that says names, right, isn't the name of the state. It's, the header. I click next. It says, all right, next thing I'm going to do is, so what value do you want me to calculate as I, change colors and the like? So I say, sure. And it's this one. And again, sometimes spreadsheets have, 20 columns and you need to tell it which one it is. This is simple enough. States in one column, the income levels in the other. So yes, indeed, that is the correct one, column for the values. I click next. It's ready to go. And there's one possible map with different colors of blue, from very light, that's Mississippi, very light blue, kind of a light green, to very dark blue up here at 42,000 is Connecticut. And again, we could say, yeah, good enough, we're done, right? But as with the other charts with Datawrapper, lots of ways that you, always happens. All right, let's try this again. And now it's gone black and white. Let's see if it wants to behave. Thank you. Okay. And we're back. All right. So as before, right, this isn't bad. There's our states. There's our dollar amounts. It is color coded from the lightest color to the darkest color, but all sorts of customizations that we can use if we were so inclined. And again, if you're relatively new in journalism or data visualization, I can tell you had I done this at sort of a normal pace, the minute or two it would take to get, from clicking new map to looking at this is just astounding compared to where things were just a few years ago. So this has decided a kind of light green to dark blue palette. Lots of other options here. If, that color looks better for you. Again, these are sort of multiple colors. If you like a single color that just sort of goes lighter to darker, that works well. Honestly, I think for a map like this where there's sort of a continuous color change, I think a single color probably works best. There are some maps, well, let me start. As you look at this palette, you can see something like this, right, is showing a range from one color to another color, right? This green here is one color kind of from light to dark. And then you get these choices down here, again, I hope that's showing up my mouse, in which there are divergent colors with kind of white in the middle. If I were to click on that, and that one looks like really odd for how it works here. It doesn't really work in this case. Those are really good choices, though, if you really have data that is divergent, that kind of has extremes, and then something that is kind of 50-50 in the middle. And the best example would be an election, where, you know, two candidates, Republican, Democrat, if, you know, the Democrat got 50% of the vote, that might be well represented by that, you know, white right in the middle. And then the more, you know, the higher the Republican vote portion, you know, the redder the map would be, the higher the Democratic vote portion, the bluer the map would be. So in a case like that, this sort of divergent look works well. When you have kind of a continuous thing like this with dollar amounts, I think, again, particularly if you're doing this kind of continuous range here from light to dark, a single color works best. But a continuous level is not your only option. You can also do this in steps, so that, and you can specify how many steps you want. So just to sort of make this clear, in here there are only 3 colors, right? So this kind of beige is the bottom third, and you can see the legend up here. This is, you know, exactly splitting it into 3 buckets, you know, the bottom third, the middle third, the upper third. The beige are all those states that are in the bottom third, light green, all those in the middle third, and the dark green, all those in the higher third. Sometimes if you're putting them in what we sometimes call buckets, sometimes that multicolor, it can kind of be okay, because you're not so much trying to show kind of the continuity of a range, but are specifically trying to show these states belong in you know, this category, these states in this category, these states in another category. Even here, there are different customizations, right? Here it has sort of automatically split these exactly in thirds. If you had one like really, really high or really low outlier that kind of messed that up, you could fiddle around with, I'm sorry, that's the custom range. You can here, make this custom and decide, yeah, you know what, make the lowest one go up to this amount. I think that's going to be, you know, more meaningful. But it also gives you, again, built-in, no programming chops needed. If you want equal count, this is going to change it so that it's basically 17, 17, and 16. If you thought, you know, right, I think when we did, yeah, so here clearly, right, there are fewer than 17 states in the highest category and more than 17 states in the middle category. That's how it breaks out by dollar amount. If you decided, you know, for whatever thing you're doing, I think the most representative way, you know, to sort of get the point across that I want is for there to be 17 low, 17 middle, 17-ish, you know, one of those will be 16 high. Again, you could change that to what we call quantile. Similarly, if you want it kind of close to linear, but this 35,726.33, you know, is bothersome, you can make it kind of rounded values. It's insisting on 5 here, but here it has 25 to 30, 30 to 35, 35 to 40, you know, et cetera. And again, see how these kind of scrunch together? Even this is customizable. I think there's a way in here to change this. Yeah, there. I mean, again, one click, and that problem with, you know, how crunched together these numbers were, now it shows it somewhat differently in these, you know, $5,000 increments there. All right, is there other stuff? Yeah, if you want, You can make the map zoomable when it goes on your site, if that were interesting. And then, of course, change the size of it if you need. I'm going to click Annotate. And again here, show labels. Interesting thing here, right? It's decided, oh, let me throw in, again, automatically, some major cities, and I can say let's throw a few more in. So I can, apparently anywhere from 0 to 21, if that's how I wanted it to look. If it's like, no, I don't want the cities, I want the actual states, I can tell it, okay, label it by a column. In this case, names has the states, and they're all my states, if I wanted that. Again, here you see prevent overlapping. That's why, New Jersey gets left out. I could unclick that, though this would be a bit of a mess if I didn't. So just an amazing amount of point and click customizability here, just minutes to build the base map, and then all sorts of things you can do with it. Obviously, we'd add a title. And if we wanted to customize, this tooltip, easy to do. We can make that look like a dollar figure, not just a raw number. If we wanted to spell out in Kansas, the per capita income is, we can do all of that. So way faster than we used to be able to build maps. So really, if you have a value, see value in doing data visualizations and don't have an expert on staff and are looking for one really simple to use program, I don't think you can beat Datawrapper. Lots of options, lots of customizability, and everything here was free. If you want to put your own name on it, not have it say created with Datawrapper, I think that can cost you some money, and I think a lot of money actually. But for us poor journalist folks, I think it's a really, really good option. All right, I'm going to move on to Flourish and Tableau really quickly. These I'm just going to kind of show you a couple of things we can do with them. So for Flourish, all right, Flourish showing. Okay, good. I was gonna say, I have a shrunken list of participants. It's like, thank you, Libby, because yours is actually the only face I can see, so I appreciate the nod so I can see. So you can see Flourish, ton of different options. Again, some weird ones you may never want to use, lots of maps. I mean, who knew there were this many different kinds of scatter plots, some of which are kind of interesting. Hierarchy, heat maps, photo sliders, really cool. We're not going to get into that. So you can see just, huge number of options here. And I just want to kind of show you a couple of them so you can see sort of what they can do. So this is something a few years ago I put together for my old newspaper, looking at housing prices for every town in Connecticut. And we got half a dozen years, 7 years of data every 2 years, from before the housing bubble and the recession until after it. So we have, column B is every town in Connecticut. Then over here, we have the median prices from 2007 to 2018. And I had the county as well. And get this static. So what I wanted to do was show kind of how prices changed, how they receded during the recession and then grew, but also wanted people to be able to see kind of how did the ranking change, and also wanted to highlight the counties. Fairfield County is in green here. If you know anything about Connecticut, that's not at all a surprise. Greenwich starts out, the highest, it's a little bigger for us, $2 million median house price in Greenwich. And we could have, published this chart or something like it, or done, just the, 2007, and then whatever the highest year was, and then the median. But instead we thought, let's have, fun with this visualization. So as this plays, it basically continuously shows the change in median price value from one point to the next point. But you'll also see, if one town overtakes another, it rises up. So, Roxbury just overtook Easton, overtook Ridgefield, Wilton and Weston keep going. If you're looking here, Greenwich went way down from 2 million down to 1.5 and is sort of static, while New Canaan and Darien are catching up, and New Canaan almost beats it out, but doesn't quite. Lots of activity down here. Up in the wealthier towns, it looks like New Canaan and Darien might switch again now, and now we're back at 2007. So this is used, and here again, not hard to build, and you can see here tons of customization, in there. This is highest. I could also do it from starting at the bottom. What were the towns with the lowest median house price, and what changed there? So I think, again, our brains just kind of work this way. There's something somewhat mesmerizing about this, and we got a lot of clicks on this when we put it in the Hartford Current. So again, a cool thing you can do with Flourish. All right, one other quick look. Stuff you can do with surveys. This is data from Flourish. It's not my data. It's sort of odd data, but it works as an example. So this is a survey that was done, and every line is one survey response. And we have the gender of the respondent. We have weight and height that, again, these are fake numbers, because the weights go from like 30 pounds to 450 pounds, and the heights from like 17 inches to 8 feet. So I don't know. I think this just for the purpose of an example. So they had favorite food, they had favorite animal, they had favorite country. And if we look at this kind of in preview, each of these dots is one survey response. So if I hold on a dot, female from Cyprus likes pizza and monkeys and lives in Bangladesh. So I can now say, let's, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Hang on. I wanted to shade by gender first. So let's just split up these male and female and get some sense of kind of what the breakdown was. But I'm also now going to group by gender, so you can see them side by side and get a sense. All right, maybe a little higher on the female, but fairly evenly split there. But instead, now I'm going to group by favorite animal. So now we're back to male and female kind of together, and we can see. So okay, overall, elephants came out higher than the others, and looks like rabbits kind of low there. But let me now also compare by gender, and now it's going to split them up. So I now have, I can see, all right, we knew elephant was bigger, and it looks like females kind of outnumber males on the elephants and the like. So let me change this group by favorite food. Here you can see, this is like fairly similar. We kind of have that problem with the bar chart of, is anyone kind of bigger than another? I'm going to go back to favorite animal. And here you see there are choices here, right? These dots that we have, a map, and then a bar chart. So yeah, if we want to see the dots as a bar chart, maybe that's a little bit better in kind of saying, okay, now I get a better feel, for how female versus male fits on the elephant. This is kind of, goofy survey data, but one of the cool things about this is, again, with a lot of data visualizations, we think about how it can help us as a reporting tool, right? Before we put anything out, can data and data visualizations help us see into a story? But also certainly, how can it help our readers see into a story? And the great thing with something like this from Flourish is you can play around with this to your heart's content to, make a sense of it. But it kind of democratizes data in the sense that you can, put this out if this really were an important survey, pretty much just like this, and invite your readers. Carve it up any way you like. What are the insights that you get out of it? So I think really engaging in that sense, that instead of the news outlet deciding these are the most important elements here, and we can still do that and push that out, but that it gives the audience complete control about how they want to see the data. So I think bar chart races and surveys, two of the really cool things Flourish can do. All right, I'm going to quickly show the two things from Tableau. Again, somewhat heavier learning curve here. Well, I was going to show what this looked like, but it reloaded it. All right, I will skip that. Take my word for it. It's kind of a, it's not just that it's a steep learning curve, but it really is kind of unintuitive in a lot of the ways that it works. And I wish they had sort of worked on that better. I think I can make that, well, it makes it full screen, but not actually any bigger. Again, just give you an idea of sort of a cool thing you can do. We had the entire state budget, broken down by line item. And so how are you going to represent this to the public? And you could certainly do some very high level elements there, but not a whole lot of diving into it. So this was a way where we could, these circles break down each of the departments, hover over it, and you get their budget. I thought it would be fun to make it intentionally look like your tax dollars going down the drain. So, it was built with this. But again, this was, a Tableau option. I didn't have to do anything. I clicked on the thing that said, yeah, give me that, flushing your money down the drain look. And then click on, any one of these. And so this chart on the right here, this is for the entire state budget. So personal services is the highest, 2.4 billion, Medicaid, a little less, also 2.4 billion, debt service, huge debt service. And then click on any of these departments. Again, hover over it, you get the full budget, but click on it, and this line item changes to just the dollar amounts for that department. So, if people were, and then all the way down here to the Poor Council on Environmental Quality with their $172,000 budget, all represented in here. Great way to let readers kind of play around and see what's going on in the entire budget in a way, certainly, with a static graphic and a story, we could never do. And then very quickly, again, just because folks in Connecticut love their UConn basketball, we decided to build something that, this is after the game, that you could sort of look minute by minute if you wanted to kind of get a sense of how things went overall. So, at 1 minute, UConn had 1 point from Morgan Tuck. And, by clicking ahead here, so at 4 minutes, the score was 9-2, and Brianna Stewart had 3 points. Brittany Sykes for Syracuse had 2. These colors are actually, the exact colors for the schools and the like. And then sort of, all the way 36 minutes, 37, 38. And then the final score at 40 minutes, so 82-51. And this is the breakdown of the scores the players got. Another way to push something out and not terribly difficult with Tableau. So again, Datawrapper, drag and drop, couldn't be easier. Let me unshare. Flourish and Tableau, a little heavier lifting, but certainly do some pretty cool stuff, and tutorials for all of them. And in the 90 seconds we have left, any questions or final thoughts?